All right, this is chapter 6 of Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice. Reading to these girls right here. Just kidding. Okay. So anyway, you'll see my new earrings. I'm the best teacher ever, in case you didn't know. I got that from Richard's parents, and Richard gave me that. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna wear my thing. Anyway, okay, sorry. So chapters, so we know that they went, we know that Mr. Darcy said that Elizabeth wasn't like basically good enough to dance with. He didn't want to even look at her or talk to her or anything like that. So the ladies of Longbourn soon waited on those of Netherfield. So they went to go visit the Bingleys, and Bingleys back and forth, right? So the visit was returned in due form. Miss Bennet's pleasing manners grew on the goodwill of Mrs. Hurst and Miss Bingley. And though the mother was found to be intolerable, and the younger sisters not worth speaking to, a wish of being better acquainted with them was expressed towards the two eldest. So like, the mom and the younger sisters, they're not even worth it, right? But they like Jane and Elizabeth. So anyway. By Jane, this attention was received with the greatest pleasure, but Elizabeth still saw superciliousness in their treatment of everybody, hardly accepting even her sister, even her sister, and could not like them, though their kindness to Jane, such as it was, had a value as arising in all probability from the influence of their brother's admiration. So they're saying like, oh, well, maybe they like her a little bit more because the brother likes her. Anyway, so it was generally evident whenever they met that he did admire her, and to her it was equally evident that Jane was yielding to the preference which she had begun to entertain for him from the first, and was in a way to be very much in love. Oh, so now they're saying Jane is in love. But Bingley's also giving her attention, so that's good, right? Right? But she considered with pleasure that it was not likely to be discovered by the world in general, since Jane, united with great strength of feeling and a composure of temper and a uniform cheerfulness of manner, which would guard her from the suspicions of impertinent. I read that wrong. She mentioned this to her friend Miss Lucas. So what's happening is that Elizabeth is worried that Mr. Bingley will not actually feel or know that Jane likes him, because Jane holds back her feelings. She's not really like showing her feelings. She's not being real flirty. She's just being normal, according to Elizabeth. So now she's worried that maybe Jane isn't showing her feelings enough. It may perhaps be pleasant, replied Charlotte, to be able to impose on the public in such a case, but it is sometimes a disadvantage to be so very guarded. If a woman conceals her affection with the same skill from the object of it, she may lose the opportunity of fixing him. She's like, yeah, if she doesn't like flirt with him or let him know, then she's going to lose him, right? And it will then be but poor consolation to believe the world equally in the dark. There is so much of gratitude or vanity in almost every attachment that it is not safe to leave any to itself. We can all begin freely. A slight preference is natural enough, but there are very few of us who have heart enough to be really in love without encouragement. She's saying that there really isn't any love unless you encourage me. Like, I'm not going to fall in love with you unless you flirt with me first. Is that what she means? You know what I'm saying? Anyway. In 9 cases out of 10, a woman had better show more affection than she feels. How can you force yourself to like somebody? Anyway, I'm sorry. Bingley likes your sister undoubtedly, but he may never do more than like her if she does not help him on. Oh my goodness. But she does help him on as much as her nature will allow. If I can perceive her regard for him, he must be a simpleton indeed not to discover it too. So Elizabeth is like, oh, I can see it. Why can't he see it? He's dumb. Anyway, remember, Eliza, that he does not know Jane's disposition as you do. But if a woman is partial to a man and does not endeavor to conceal it, he must find it out. Perhaps he must if he sees enough of her. But though Bingley and Jane meet tolerably often, it is never for many hours together. As they always see each other in large mixed parties, it is impossible that every moment should be employed in conversing together. Jane should therefore make the most of every half hour in which she can command his attention. When she is secure of him, there will be leisure for falling in love as much as she chooses. She's like, yeah, as soon as she knows that she's got him, she's caught him, she can fall in love later. Isn't that crazy? I mean, do you actually think that's okay? I don't think that's okay. So we know what Charlotte thinks. Charlotte's a little wacky, I think. But hey, I mean, maybe a lot of people think like her. right? Are you understanding what she's saying, right? Anyway, your plan is a good one, replied Elizabeth, where nothing is in question but the desire of being well married. And if I were determined to get a rich husband, or any husband, I dare say I should adopt it. But these are not Jane's feelings. She is not acting by design. As yet, she cannot even be certain of the degree of her own regard, nor of its reasonableness. She has known him only a fortnight. She danced 4 dances with him at Meryton. She saw him one morning at his own house, and has since dined in company with him 4 times. It is not quite enough to make her understand his character. So she's like, yeah, maybe she does like him, but I mean, maybe she doesn't understand herself, and they've only known each other for a little bit. She says, not as you represent it. Had she merely dined with him, she might only have discovered whether he had a good appetite. But you must remember that 4 evenings have been also spent together, and 4 evenings may do a great deal. I mean, I have heard of people falling in love fast, like where it's like love at first sight. There was this actor, Andy Garcia. He gave an interview talking about how when he first met his wife, he asked her to marry him. I'm like, wait, was that real? But I don't know if they're still together. I need to check. But at the time when he gave the interview, they were still together. And I'm like, wow, maybe love at first sight does happen. I don't know. Maybe that's happening with Jane and Bingley. Anyway, so 4 evenings may do a great deal. Yes, these 4 evenings have enabled them to ascertain that they both like vin et une. I'm not really sure what that is. I'll look it up. Better than commerce. But with respect to any other leading characteristic, I do not imagine that much has been unfolded. Well, said Charlotte, I wish Jane success with all my heart, and if she were married to him tomorrow, I should think she had as good a chance of happiness as if she were to be studying his character for a 12-month. Happiness in marriage is entirely a matter of chance. Do you think so? Do you think marriage is a matter of chance? I don't know. So I think Charlotte's a little wacky, right? Her advice is a little funky, but let's see. If the dispositions of the parties are ever so well known to each other, or ever so similar beforehand, it does not advance their felicity in the least. They always continue to grow sufficiently, unlike afterwards, to have their share of vexation. And it is better to know as little as possible of the defects of the person with whom you are to pass your life. Yeah. Did you hear what she said? She said, it is better to know as little as possible the defects of the person with whom you are to pass your life. Okay. Oh, look right here. You make me laugh, Charlotte, but it is not sound. You know it is not sound, and that you would never act this way yourself. Well, let's see if Charlotte does act this way ever. Occupied in observing Mr. Bingley's attentions to her sister, Elizabeth was far from suspecting that she was herself becoming an object of some interest in the eyes of his friends. Mr. Darcy had at first scarcely allowed her to be pretty. He had looked at her without admiration at the ball. Okay, so we're talking about Mr. Darcy. He's looking at her with admiration. What the heck has happened here? He said she was barely tolerable last time. Remember? Anyway. So he had looked at her without admiration at the ball, and when they next met, he looked at her only to criticize. But no sooner had he made it clear to himself and his friends that she had hardly a good feature in her face, than he began to find it was rendered uncommonly intelligent by the beautiful expression of her dark eyes. So at first he was looking at her just to be like, oh my gosh, just to criticize her and find everything wrong with her. But in the process of that, he's like, oh, well, look at this. She's pretty. Oh, wow. Like, it's kind of backfiring on him, right? Anyway, to this discovery succeeded some others equally mortifying. So why is he finding this why is he mortified that he finds her pretty? I mean, she's lowly. She is not on equal footing with him in society or anything, So he's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I think she's attractive. Like that. You know what I mean? Anyway. Though he had detected with a critical eye more than one feature of perfect symmetry in her form, he was forced to acknowledge her figure to be light and pleasing. So he said that when he looked at her symmetry and there were errors, I guess. It's like when I was bigger than the other, it was like that. Because we're symmetrical. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Kenneth Reed. Okay, so he was forced to acknowledge her figure to be light and pleasing, and in spite of his asserting that her manners were not those of the fashionable world, he was caught by their easy playfulness. Of this, she was perfectly unaware, so she had no idea that he was staring at her and like assessing her and checking her out, basically, right? To her, he was only the man who made himself agreeable nowhere and who had not thought her handsome enough to dance with. He began to wish to know more of her, and as a step towards conversing with her himself, attended to her conversations with others. His doing so drew her notice. It was at Sir William Lucas's where a large party were assembled. So, at parties, I'm sure y'all have been to some gatherings, right? Where there are just groups of people talking. Well, wherever Elizabeth goes to talk, he's kind of like following her like a creep, because he just wants to listen to what she's saying. Maybe he's just socially awkward. I mean, so the guy's handsome and rich. Maybe he just doesn't know how to behave. I don't know. That's a little creepy. Anyway, so she noticed this, right? She says, "What does Mr. Darcy mean," she said to Charlotte, "by listening to my conversations with Colonel Forster?" That is a question which Mr. Darcy only can answer. But if he does it any more, I shall certainly let him know that I see what he is about. He has a very satirical eye, and if I do not begin by being impertinent myself, I shall soon grow afraid of him. On his approaching them soon afterwards, because here he comes, right, to listen to her conversation. On his approaching them soon afterwards, though without seeming to have any intention of speaking, Miss Lucas defied her friend to mention such a subject to him, which immediately provoking Elizabeth to do it, she turned to him and said, so they're standing there talking, and they notice him coming, so Charlotte's like, you better stop. So that makes Elizabeth want to say something. I mean, don't tell her not to. She's going to do it, right? So anyway, she said, so now Elizabeth's going to talk to him about it, because she's like, dude, you're coming around here, not even talking, but you're following me. It's weird, right? So did you not think, Mr. Darcy, that I expressed myself uncommonly well just now when I was teasing Colonel Forster to give us a ball at Meryton with great energy? But it is a subject which always makes a lady energetic. You are severe on us. It will be her turn soon to be teased, said Miss Lucas. I am going to open the instrument, Eliza, and you know what follows. So why did Charlotte do that? She basically shut Elizabeth up because she thought Elizabeth was going to, tease Mr. Darcy some more, right? Like, oh my gosh, I know my friend. I need to shut her up. Let's play some music, right? You are a very strange creature by way of a friend, always wanting me to play and sing before anybody and everybody. If my vanity had taken a musical turn, you would have been invaluable, but as it is, I would really rather not sit down before those who must be in the habit of hearing the very best performers. On Miss Lucas's persevering, however, she added, very well, if it must be so, it must, and gravely glancing at Mr. Darcy, there is a fine old saying which everybody here is, of course, familiar with, keep your breath to cool your porridge, and I shall keep mine to swell my song. Her performance was pleasing, though by no means capital. After a song or two, and before she could reply to the entreaties of several that she would sing again, she was eagerly succeeded at the instrument by her sister Mary, who, having, in consequence of being the only plain one in the family, worked hard for knowledge and accomplishments, was always impatient for display. Poor Mary, she's the awkward middle child. There's just really nothing to her. So she tries really hard to be like that accomplished girl, and so it kind of comes off as a little unnatural. So Mary had neither genius nor taste. And though vanity had given her application, it had given her likewise a pedantic air and conceited manner, which would have injured a higher degree of excellence than she had reached. Elizabeth, easy and unaffected, had been listened to with much more pleasure, though not playing half so well, and Mary, at the end of a long concerto, was glad to purchase praise and gratitude by Scotch and Irish airs, at the request of her younger sisters, who with some of the Lucases and 2 or 3 officers joined eagerly in dancing at one end of the room. Oh my gosh, now it's a dance party. So, I mean, does that happen to you guys? Do y'all play music at your house parties and all of a sudden y'all are dancing? Do y'all dance? Interesting. And no one's like,
no, not like that.
Well, when I was in college, that's what we would do, but we knew we were going to do that. we would go like we'd dance out some merengue, but we'd move all the furniture like to the side to make a little dance floor. That's what we do. Okay, sorry. So they're dancing, right? So Mr. Darcy stood near them in silent indignation at such a mode of passing the evening, to the exclusion of all conversation, and was too much engrossed by his own thoughts to perceive that Sir William Lucas was his neighbor, till Sir William thus began. So he didn't notice Sir William standing next to him. So all of a sudden, Sir William started talking to him. Of course, I mean, that's what people do at parties. Like, if you're not going to be fun at a party, then go wait in the car. Go wait in the car. Anyway. So Sir William was talking to him. What a charming amusement for young people this is, Mr. Darcy. There's nothing like dancing after all. I consider it as one of the first refinements of polished societies. Certainly, sir. And it has the advantage of also being in vogue amongst the less polished societies of the world. Every savage can dance. Sir William only smiled. Your friend performs delightfully, he continued after a pause on seeing Bingley join the group. And I doubt not that you are an adept in the science yourself, Mr. Darcy. You saw me dance at Meryton, I believe, sir. Yes, indeed, and received no inconsiderable pleasure from the sight. Do you often dance at St. James's? Never, sir. Do you not think it would be a proper compliment to the place? It is a compliment which I never pay to any place if I can avoid it. You have a house in town, I conclude? Mr. Darcy bowed. He didn't even answer with a word. He bowed. Like, that's it. Darcy's done talking. I'm done. Do you know what I'm saying? So anyway, I had once some thoughts of fixing in town myself, for I am fond of superior society, but I did not feel quite certain that the air of London would agree with Lady Lucas. He paused in hopes of an answer, but his companion was not disposed to make any, so Darcy stopped talking. He's like, that's it, I'm done with this conversation. You know what I mean? So he's just not even answering. So anyway, and Elizabeth, at that instant, moving towards them, he was struck with the notion of doing a very gallant thing and called out to her. So Sir William was like, oh, heck no, you're not going to freaking ignore me. Elizabeth, come here. You know what I'm saying? So it says, my dear Miss Eliza, why are you not dancing? Mr. Darcy, you must allow me to present this young lady to you as a very desirable partner. You cannot refuse to dance, I am sure, when so much beauty is before you. Ah, ándale. That's what he gets. He's like, oh, you just told me you don't like to dance? Elizabeth, come here. He wants to dance with you. Like, that's what he's doing. Anyway, and taking her hand, he would have given it to Mr. Darcy, who, though extremely surprised, was not unwilling to receive it, when she instantly drew back and said with some discomposure to Sir William, she's like, oh, whoa, like, right? Indeed, sir, I have not the least intention of dancing. I entreat you not to suppose that I move this way in order to beg for a partner. Mr. Darcy, with grave propriety, requested to be allowed the honor of her hand, but in vain. Elizabeth was determined. So that's twice now she says no to him. So Sir William's like, okay, come dance with Darcy. She says no. Then Darcy asks her, like, yeah, no, let's go dance. She's like, no. That's twice, right? Elizabeth was determined, nor did Sir William at all shake her purpose by his attempt at persuasion. You excel so much in the dance, Miss Eliza, that it is cruel to deny me the happiness of seeing you. And though this gentleman dislikes the amusement in general, he can have no objection, I am sure, to oblige us in 1/2 hour. Mr. Darcy is all politeness, and Elizabeth smiling. He is indeed, but considering the inducement, my dear Miss Eliza, we cannot wonder at his complaisance, for who would object to such a partner? He's like, oh, come on, Elizabeth. Who would object to Mr. Darcy? And then look what she does. Elizabeth looked archly and turned away. She's like, oh, who can deny him? Me. And she just leaves. It's so funny. Anyway, okay, her resistance had not injured her with the gentleman, and he was thinking of her with some complacency when thus accosted by Miss Bingley. So you think, like, oh, that little fart knocker just denied me. That's it. I'm never talking to her again. But no, that's not what happened. It says that she was not injured in his mind, so he still liked her. Maybe even more now, right? So he was thinking about her when Miss Bingley came up. I can guess the subject of your reverie. I should imagine not. You're considering how insupportable it would be to pass many evenings in this manner. In such society, I indeed am quite of your opinion. I was never more annoyed. The insipidity and yet the noise, the nothingness and yet the self-importance of all these people. What I would give to hear your strictures on them. Your conjecture is totally wrong, I assure you. My mind was more agreeably engaged. I have been meditating on the very great pleasure which a pair of fine eyes in the face of a pretty woman can bestow. Miss Bingley immediately fixed her eyes on his face and desired he would tell her what lady had the credit of inspiring such reflections. Mr. Darcy replied with great intrepidity, Miss Elizabeth Bennet. Miss Elizabeth Bennet, repeated Miss Bingley. I am all astonishment. How long has she been such a favourite? And pray, when am I to wish you joy? That is exactly the question which I expected you to ask. A lady's imagination is very rapid. It jumps from admiration to love, from love to matrimony in a moment. I knew you would be wishing me joy. So she's basically saying, oh, great, when's the wedding? Just because he likes her eyes. He's like, you know what, that's just like you. Just do that. That's stupid. I'm just saying, her eye, and you think I'm going to marry her? Like, calm down. Anyway, so, nay, if you're so serious about it, I shall consider the matter as absolutely settled. You will have a charming mother-in-law indeed, and of course she will be always at Pemberley with you. He listened to her with perfect indifference. I mean, he didn't care what she was saying. Well, she chose to entertain herself in this manner, and as his composure convinced her that all was safe, her wit flowed long. She just kept saying crap and talking smack about Elizabeth and her family the whole time, because he was like, I don't care, talk about her. It's not like I love her. You know what I mean? So he didn't care. All right, the end.